Hello everyone, welcome to Let's Crack UPSC CSE English. About me, I am Sandeep Bhushan and my credentials are I have 8 years of teaching experience for civil services. I teach international relations, internal security and in-depth analysis of editorials and articles which will be very much useful for your prelims preparation as well as the mains preparation. And this video is in regards to how to crack prelims 2020, and prior to that you have a notification in regards to Let's Crack UPSC CSE, which is India's largest learning platform. And once you get subscribed to this, you will have access to unlimited live and recorded classes from India's best educators. And the benefits you get from subscribing is that you have daily live classes wherein you can chat with your educator, engage in discussions, ask your doubts, and also be part of the answer polls. And you also have the live test and quizzes wherein you can evaluate your preparation with our regular mock test and quizzes and get detailed analysis on your performance. You also have the structured courses wherein all our courses are structured in line with UPSC exam syllabus, which would help you for the best preparation. You have unlimited access, that is, upon subscription you get access to all our live and recorded courses wherein you can watch it from your mobile or laptop. You also have the top educators at Unacademy wherein you can see the Sudarshan Gurja, Mrunal Patel, Roman Saini, Ashish Malik and others. You also have others like Venkatesh Chaturvedi, Saurabh Pandey, Ankit Kumar. The courses in the UPSC CSE is polity, history, current affairs, optional courses, geography, economy, UPSC batches, environment and ecology, and also science and technology. Along with this, you have courses for governance, practice and strategy, CSAT paper, ethics, integrity and aptitude, Indian society, social issues, essay writing, internal security, answer writing, and also in regards to the interview preparation. And coming to the UPSC CSE subscription, in regards to subscription, you have 12 months of subscription and also you have 24 month subscription. Wherein 12 month subscription, your original price is 40,000 and you can go ahead with subscribing using my code SBT10, and once you use my code for subscription you will get 10% discount and your price would come down to up to 36,000 from 40,000. And you also have 24-month subscription which the original price is 48,000. Upon subscription of, when you use my code SBT10, you would get the price for 43,200. So you are getting 24 months for the amount you pay for 12 months, that is 40,000, and plus 1 month, that is 8,000. So 40 plus 8,000 is 48,000. So the original price of 24 month subscription is only just as equivalent to 12 months plus 1 month. But you also have an added advantage here. When you use my code SBT10, you can get it for only 43,200. So it's always better to go ahead with a subscription of 24 months, try to get the maximum benefit out of it, and then go ahead with the taking up the, listening to the classes of not only mine, that is the editorials and analysis of the entire contemporary issues, but also you can view in regards to all the educators with respect to all the subjects. So hurry up and go ahead with the subscription. And we would come to the point, that is today's discussion, the Hindu in-depth analysis of editorials and articles on the Hindu newspaper. And the topics to be discussed are rate cuts and then punitive measure. So when we discuss about this analysis of editorials and articles, it will be very useful for you all, because the explanation or the in-depth analysis what we would take up in my class would definitely be helpful for your prelims as well also mains, which could be helpful for your factual point of view and also in regards to the analytical point of view. So we would take up the first topic, that is rate cuts. So RBI has come into the existence and then it has gone ahead with making sure that it has opened the floodgates. Which floodgates? It is in regards to the opening the floodgates of liquidity. So the RBI governor Shaktikanta Das has opened the liquidity floodgates for the banks. That means he has made sure that there would be more of liquidity or more of money circulation with the banks. So why is it necessary that there has to be more money with the banks? Yes, as the situation what we have experienced, that India was in the past going ahead with economic slowdown, and again in regards to the COVID-19, the economy has been badly hit. Thereby it is necessary that there has to be more money with the banks, that is more liquidity with the banks. So the need of the hour is to make sure that the money is there with the banks. There is more liquidity in the market. So that was the reason that RBI governor was taken into consideration of opening the floodgates of the liquidity. That is, as we are all experiencing the national lockdown. Because of the national lockdown, the informal sectors being shut down, and the employees who were part of or else working with in the informal sectors were all now at homes without any work and also income. So the main intention is to make sure that there is more money with the bank, so that that can be used to the circulation of the money for the informal sector employees, and also in regards to making that there is more money with the banks, and whereby banks can go ahead with pumping money in an indirect way to the people. So we will look at that. So because the idea of opening the floodgates was through reducing the key interest rates. So the RBI governor has reduced the interest rates by 75 basis points. That means the repo rates were reduced by 75 basis points, and the reverse repo rate was reduced by almost 100 basis points. That means 75 basis points is 0.75 percentage of the entire what you say the interest rate. And then when we are talking about the reverse repo rate, it has been reduced to 100 basis points. That means 1% of the entire reverse repo rate percentage. So the reason why they have reduced is to fight the effects of the coronavirus on the financial system. So this is important for our better understanding. That is to fight against the coronavirus, especially which is impacting the financial system very badly. And the Shaktikanta Das also has addressed the crucial factor of sustaining the system liquidity. So what is important is not just what you say having liquidity for any given point of time, but it has to be spread across for a limited period of time, that is which could be extended for almost 3 months, making sure that the individuals and the businessmen also would be benefited by the pumping of money into the market, that is into the banks. The initiative or the what do you say the floodgates opened by the RBI governor, that is the liquidity, pumping of liquidity into the market. And the central bank has widened the policy rate corridor. As we are talking about, the repo rate was reduced by 75 basis points. The reverse repo rate was cut 15 basis points more than repo rate. That means repo rate is 75 basis points cut, and then reverse repo rate has been cut by 100 basis points. So we will look at this, the repo rate, which is again in regards to the preliminary factual data. So we have to look at what was the repo rate cut, so that to what extent it has come down. So they have cut 75 basis points, which has come down to 4.4 percentage. That means the repo rate as on today is 4.4 percentage, and the reverse repo rate was cut by almost what do you say 100 basis point, that is 90, and then it has come to 4 percentage. So if you look at this in the month of February, and then compare it with the March 2020, that is February 2019, comparing it with the March 2020. So in February 2020, the repo rate was 6.25 percentage, and now it has come down to 4.4 percentage. Fine. And then the reverse repo rate was 6 percentage in February 2019, and in March 2020 it is 4 percentage. So it has dropped almost, what do you say, 2 percentage, close to 5.75 or 2 percentage for the repo rate. And then in regards to the reverse repo rate, 2 percentage has been reduced. And the higher reduction in the reverse repo rate, what is the reason why that reverse repo rate has been, what do you say, reduced? So what is reverse repo rate and repo rate, I would certainly make you understand. But looking at this, the higher reduction, that means the reduction has taken place compared to repo rate. Reverse repo rate reduction is more than the repo rate. So what was the reason why the RBI has gone ahead with reverse repo rate more than the repo rate? That is to make sure that banks will have more of money, so that banks can lend more to the people or to the market wherein there is need of the excess liquidity. That means the reverse repo rate is aimed at prompting banks to lend more rather than keeping their excess liquidity with the RBI. That means the whatever the reverse repo rate has been reduced from 6 to 4 percentage, the need of the hour for the banks to do is that they have to pass on the liquidity to the market, to the market or into the market. That is what main intention is, but not just keeping the extra money or the excess liquidity with the RBI, because reverse repo rate is the one which is again linked to the RBI, Apex Bank, and to the nationalized bank. The sum total of long-term repo operation. So you have, along with the reverse repo rate and the reverse repo rate, this first, and then the second one is reverse repo rate. There is something else taken into consideration to pump the liquidity into the market. That is to make sure that there is more surplus of money rotation into the market. So the government, that is the RBI, has gone ahead with the third one, that is long-term repo operation, LTRO. So through this method, that is LTRO, long-term repo operation, there would be pumping of 1 lakh crore, 1 lakh crore of rupees into the market, and 1.37 lakh crore each from, again, they have cut the cash reserves ratio. So first one is repo rate, second one is reverse repo rate, third one is long-term repo operation, fourth one is in regards to cash reserves ratio, and also making sure that an increase in marginal standing facility, that is overnight borrowings by banks from the RBI, which through this they have also made sure that 3.74 lakh crore rupees will be pumped into the market. That means with the long term repo operation, 1 lakh crore rupees, and from cash reserves ratio it would be 1.37 lakh crore rupees, and by marginal standing facility they would pump 3.74 lakh crore rupees. So that means there is large amount of money which the RBI is, what do you say, trying to get into the banks, so that there is more liquidity in the banks. Thereby there will not be any kind of situation that the market is not having money. That means the market without liquidity, or else there should not be any kind of liquidity squeeze or liquidity crunch in the banking sector. That is why RBI has come up with various methods. So as of now, what we have seen is the repo rate, first one, reverse repo rate, the process, I mean various methods to pump money into the banks. First is repo rate, second is reverse repo rate, and then the third one is long-term repo operation, and the fourth one is in regards to cash reserves ratio, and the fifth is marginal standing facility. So 1 lakh crore rupees, 1.37 lakh crore rupees, and then 3.74 lakh crore rupees. So with this together, they would be pumping so much of money into the market, that is by the RBI's liquidity injection, and this injection is as equivalent to 3.4 percentage of the GDP. This is very very important. That means look at the, what do you say, role taken up by the RBI to make sure that there is enough of liquidity in the banks or with the banks. So now the amount which or the liquidity which has been pumped or injected into the market or the banks especially by the RBI is equivalent to 3.4 percentage of the GDP. That is the what is a job being done by the RBI to make sure that at this moment there has to be more money. So you might get a doubt that when the RBI is taking into consideration all these what do you say factors through these various methods pumping money into the market, you might get a doubt that when there is more money with the people, then again it would lead to inflation. Yes, definitely when there is more money with the people or in the banks, then it leads to inflation. But at this juncture the need of the hour is more of liquidity. At this juncture the need of the hour is more of liquidity, so that there should not be shortage of any money with the banks. It could be for making sure that any kind of what is a welfare schemes would be taken up which would reach the informal sector employees who are sitting at home. And if the scenario is in such a way that the RBI feels that there is more liquidity with the banks, then definitely the RBI will suck the excess money which is with the banks by again making sure that the repo rate and reverse repo rate would be increased, so that again whatever the excess money with the banks or with the people would be sucked out. And now what the important is, it is injecting. When there is more of money liquidity, then it will suck out the money. And what is the priority now for the RBI is to make sure that the system is lubricated. Lubricated in what way? Lubricated with the money. Lubricated that there is more, I mean enough of liquidity with the banks and in the market. So that is a high priority. They are at this moment not worried of excess of money or the inflation which might happen. If it happens, then again RBI will come to the rescue of sucking the extra liquidity if at all it is there. And we have also seen that there is a ban or prohibition on term loans, and there is a deferments in the sense there is a postponement or rescheduling of interest on the working capital loans. Why there is a ban on term loans, or why there is deferment, or that means rescheduling or postponement of the interest rate on the working capital loans? Because this will what you say kind of be a relief to the individuals and to the businesses, the one who are involved in the business. It will be a kind of relief to them, because if there is immediately some kind of prohibition on the term loans, that thereby whatever the money circulation is not there, or else the kind of movement in regards to the demand and supply and consumption is not happening at this moment, it could provide some kind of breath or some kind of what you say relief to the businessmen and the individuals. And then in regards to the deferment, that is reschedule or postponement of the interest in the working capital. So if there is a possibility that the businesses or the individuals who are involved in the business, if their working capital loans, I mean to the working capital loans, if there is a possibility that they can postpone for 1 2 3 months of the loans, capital loans, of the interest, then that would reduce the burden or the anxiety on the individuals or the businessman, so that it could not be that there would be fall in income or cash flows. So to maintain the cash flows, the RBI has come up with the kind of prohibition on the term loans and rescheduling or postponement of interest on the working capital loans, so that it will make sure that the cash will flow. There will not be any fall in income or shortage in income with the businessmen or the individuals involved in the business. So the RBI has taken a firm decision that it has come to the rescue of the people, that there is more money and then there would be enough of consumption activity which will take place. So we will just look at what we were talking about, repo rate which has come down up to 4.4 percentage, that is 75 basis point, and then reverse repo rate which has what do you say come down to 4 percentage, which has reduced, they have reduced almost 100 basis points. So what is repo rate? It is also called as benchmark interest rate, and that is the rate at which the RBI lends money to the banks. I repeat once again, repo rate means it is an benchmark interest rate. So it is an interest rate at which the rate at which the RBI will lend money to the banks. That means when RBI is giving money to the banks have to, what do you say, repay it. I mean, take it in some interest with some interest rate. So that interest rate was earlier, 6.25 percentage. So then they have reduced it to 4 percentage. So that means the banks will have more money with a less interest rate. Please do understand, it is the rate at which the RBI will lend money to the banks. So at what interest the RBI is lending money to the banks? Now it is at 4 percentage. Earlier it was for 6 percentage. So there is a 2 percentage what you say difference when compared to the February 2019 and March 2020. There is 2 percentage of the interest wherein the RBI is lending money to the banks. That means when it is at a lower interest rate, banks will take money and banks will have more money with them. And the intention of the RBI is also to make sure that the banks will possess more of money with them. The intention, the why intention? Because RBI wanted to inject more money with the banks so that there is more liquidity in the banks. So that is what is important when RBI has reduced from 6 percentage, that is in the year 2019, February 2019, to comparing it with March 2020. The repo rate, the rate at which the RBI lends money to the banks, have reduced from 6 to 4 percentage, and this is a welcome move wherein it is a point wherein injection takes place in regards to liquidity. And we'll also look at what is reverse repo rate, and this is a short-term borrowing rate at which RBI borrows money from banks. So it is just opposite to the repo rate, reverse of the repo rate. What is repo rate? As we have discussed, it is a rate at which the RBI lends money to the banks. So when RBI is lending money to the banks, at this moment it is lending at a very less interest rate, that is 4 percentage. Why? The purpose is the bank should have more money. But what is reverse repo rate? Reverse repo rate is the one wherein RBI borrows money from the banks. So RBI, whenever feels that there is more money with the banks, more liquidity with the banks, more liquidity in the hands of people, more money in the hands of people, or more money in the market, then what it does is RBI increases the repo rate. Then it will borrow the money at a very, what do you say, high interest rates from the banks, so that it wanted to suck the money. So now again I'll go back to this picture. So now you will understand it very clearly that in February 2019, please focus on this picture. In February 2019, comparing it with the March 2020, in February 2019, the red graph, that is repo rate. Repo rate was 6.25 percentage. That means what is repo rate? Again, I would say the RBI, the rate at which RBI lends money to the banks. So the RBI is lending money to the banks at 6.2 percentage earlier, but now 4%. That means banks can take more money with only 4.4 percentage. And in regards to reverse repo rate, earlier 6 percentage, earlier in the sense I'm talking about February 2019, and now in the month of, that is now March 2020, it is 4 percentage. What is this? This is the one, reverse repo rate is the one wherein RBI borrows money from the banks. So either way, if we look at, it is that the RBI wants more money to be what is parked with the banks. And here you please look at this, the higher reduction in the reverse repo rate, the higher reduction in the reverse repo rate was aimed at prompting banks to lend more money. That means the main intention of, what do you say, higher reduction from 6 to 4 percentage, that is 100 basis point, that is 2 percentage, was in regards to making sure that there is more of money or liquidity with the, what do you say, banks so that it would make sure that it would spend more money. So here, rather than parking their excess liquidity with the RBI, now the excess money the RBI wants to be with the banks itself, so that there could be possibility that the spending can take place. So we have looked at the rate cuts, what the RBI has come up with, different measures the RBI has come up with, that what do you say, just opening the floodgates of liquidity. And then we have looked at what are the different ways the RBI has pumped money into it. I'm just what you say recapping once for the benefit of the viewers. First is the repo rate, and then the second method is reverse repo rate, and the third one is long term repo operation, that is LTRO, and then the fourth one is cash reserves ratio, and the fifth one is marginal standing facility. So these, why I'm again repeating is or revising for you is because this could be an analytical question in the Prelims 2020. Please do understand my point. This could be an analytical point of question from the Prelims 2020 point of view, because you could say the RBI has opened the floodgates in the month of March 2020 to overcome the financial constraints, and the following methods were used or by introduced by the or initiated by the RBI to fund or to make sure that there is more liquidity funding into the banks. So what are the methods? That is repo rate, reverse repo rate, long term repo operation, cash reserves ratio, and then marginal standing facility. So this is very important. And again, in regards to the what do you say factual data, all these action or the initiative taken by RBI, now the money, how much liquidity is present with the banks is almost, it is equivalent to 3.4 percentage of the our GDP. So it is a huge money, and it's look at the responsibility of the RBI. We generally do not think so much about RBI, but at the time of economic what do you say shortage of economic shortage of liquidity or economic instability, whatever is going on, or economic crisis what India is what do you say experiencing, this is the what do you say the backbone at this time. So RBI is the backbone which is trying to make sure that there is enough of liquidity with the banks. So I hope you have understood it very clearly, so that how the money can be pumped into the market. And then as I said, if it is more money or more of liquidity in the bank, again banks will go ahead with increasing the interest rates, so that to suck the money out of the market or with the banks. Now we will look at the next topic, that is what is going on across the world now, and then whatever is going on across the world, is it really what do you say that we can come out of it or we can find alternatives. And then when we are trying to find alternatives, what are the challenges and how best we can try to come out of it, or we can make sure that the entire scenario is what do you say happy, so that everyone is looked at it, every country is looked as equal at this moment, that there is no what do you say developing countries, developed countries, or rich economies, all that is not actually to be considered, but what is been going on or was going on, we have to shred all those, and then we have to come together. And that is what the article is talking about. It's also a fight against punitive measures. It's not just the world has come forward and then it has become a single to fight against the pandemic, that is the COVID-19, but what the countries, what all the countries have to make sure that they have to come together, and also think that what exactly is happening in regards to the economy of all the individual countries, that is the economy of the underdeveloped countries or developing countries, and also the other developed countries. So who have to think about all this? It is the developed countries, or else the developed economies have to, what do you say, clearly understand the economic situation of the crisis of the developing countries and underdeveloped countries. And this what I am talking about, understand the situation of the economic crisis of the developing and underdeveloped countries. When I'm talking about this, yes, I'm trying to link it with the kind of sanctions or the economic sanctions put up by the so-called developed, or what do you say, developed countries and developed economies on the developing countries because of their political, what do you say, measures, and then making sure that there is some kind of hegemony being, what do you say, taken up across the various developing countries or underdeveloped countries. So I will make you understand that what is the importance about the sanctions, what is going on, or how sanctions will make sure that the developing countries would be badly hit at this moment, and what is the need of the hour is that it is not just trying to find a clinically tested drug for coronavirus, but still we need to also understand and find a solution or a measure that we need to go ahead with, trying to eradicate the word or the keyword called as sanctions. So the word sanctions have to be lifted. And then now I'll get into the topic, and then I will make you explain and understand how the sanctions will impact at this juncture the economic conditions or the economic, what do you say, crisis what the developing countries and underdeveloped countries are experiencing at this, what is a pandemic situation. So developed countries and their groups, that is, they provide economic package to themselves. So it is very obvious or clear that the developed countries will definitely try to support their own their own developed countries, that is their partners, through the economic packages. That means the developed countries, they will support their partners with the economic packages. But what is happening to the developing countries? I repeat that the developed countries will definitely make sure that they support their partners, that is the other developed countries or the, what you say, developed economies, by providing economic packages. But when you keep aside the developed countries and then look at or think about the developing countries, these are the countries that they are with, or they are waiting with a hope of handouts. That means they are waiting for the kind of, what you say, economic package to be given by the developed countries to the developing countries. Please to understand my point that the developing countries at this juncture are waiting with a hope that the developed countries would forward some kind of relief to the developing countries in the form of economic package, or from the international financial institutions, or from some generous rich allies, that is the friends of the developing countries. But what is actually happening is not that. Why? Because we will look into it why this is not happening, why the developed countries are not, what do you say, giving the economic package to the developing countries, or else the international financial institutions are supporting the developing countries, or else the generous rich allies, that is the friend of the rich developed country, the one who is a friend of the developing countries, none of them are coming to the rescue at this juncture in regards to the economic package, or trying to, what do you say, give some grants or funds, so that the kind of economic crisis what the countries or the developing countries are facing, they have to come out of it. And we have seen that any global catalysm, that is catastrophe, that is any global catastrophe which takes place or which affects the poor countries, is actually it hits the poor countries rather than the rich countries, as the poor countries do not have the resources, and also whatever resources they have, the poor countries, they cannot meet the unexpected economic challenge. So what is the economic challenge is at this moment to the poor countries is definitely the hit of the pandemic COVID-19. And to this, The consequences is that the global economy recession has taken place. Because of these two, or the economic crisis wherein the poor countries are facing, they are unable to, what you say, cope up with the unexpected economic challenge. And what is that is actually creating a problem is the global disaster, the global catastrophe. At this moment, what is the catastrophe? It is COVID-19 pandemic. And the global community has the responsibility, actually looking into it, humanitarian kind, that the global community has a responsibility to rise to the occasion and then try to help the poor countries, that they meet at least, what do you say, to some extent the unexpected economic challenge by giving or by providing economic package. And the global pandemic demands game changing. That is what is important, what I was talking about. The nutshell of almost, what do you say, 10 minutes what I have discussed is this point. The global pandemic. What is a global pandemic now? That is the COVID-19. And this COVID-19, the coronavirus COVID-19 is demanding a game changing action. It is not that the countries are coming up with a, what do you say, change, but it is the COVID-19 which is demanding from all the countries a game changing actions. Why? Because this game changing action by all the countries to halt its global spread. That means to make sure that the COVID-19 pandemic will not spread across, but now it has spread. So we could not handle the health crisis altogether, but still the global pandemic is demanding that we can at least make sure that the health crisis will not go maximum or out of control, or it will not be a bubble, but rather it would, what you say, we all can contain it with the kind of health crisis what we are facing at this moment, by making sure that not more of lives would be lost. Humankind has to be protected at this time. So we are in a position, understanding the importance of coming together, understanding the importance of being interconnected. Even though we are all, what do you say, independent sovereign countries, we are all coming together to fight against the global pandemic COVID-19, to make sure that there would be minimal impact on the health crisis. And what is important, the post of the health crisis is that the economic crisis. Yes, it is that what I have started with, the economic package. This is what is important. All together, the entire, what you say, globe or the countries have to come together to make sure that the poor countries or the developing countries should be assisted by the economic package by the developed countries. And not only that, they, I mean, game changing action has to be that there has to be medical supplies and to rebuild the shattered lives. Shattered lives is in regards to the economic crisis what we have facing. And this crisis, economic crisis, might, what do you say, bubble further into economic recession, and we have to stop there. The bubbling should not take place, or it should not increase further to economic depression. If that take place, then the entire, what you say, the so-called developed nations also will reel under lot of economic pressure, and then there is a possibility that the so-called developed economies will also shrink so badly that they would also be in a position as equivalent as now the developing countries. So it is the need of the hour, not only for the developing countries and the poor countries, but also for the developed countries to come together and be part of the game changing action. This is a key word, game changing action, wherein it will be important for your mains and also prelims point of view. And what kind of, what do you say, I was talking about the earlier game changing actions. So we will look at what are the challenges that we need to, what do you say, shred them, we need to overcome them, and then we have to make sure that this pandemic is teaching us. Please do understand what I'm making a point. This pandemic, that is COVID-19, is teaching us, teaching the humans, teaching the humankind that we all should be together. Together, yes, we can fight against the the COVID-19. If we are not together, and then as united, or we are not, what do you say, as a members, as one family, then the COVID will destroy us. But it is teaching us, teaching humans that there has to be a game changing action that we have to be together. And what is the main important thing that we need to focus, wherein there is a possibility that economic packages from the developing countries is not reaching the developing and then poor countries, is because of definitely the sanctions. That is the sanctions which actually have been put in place by US and the other so-called the most developed country, or else the most powerful country, that is in regards to US. So we will look at the UN sanctions and then the US sanctions. So these sanctions have to be removed. If the sanctions are removed, yes, definitely this is a game changing. This is a game changing one which will keep us all together. And then we will look at the UN sanctions. Now, one way of dealing this is with the emergency in an emergency itself. So we need to have, or we need to, what is it, deal with the emergency in an emergency mode itself. So whenever there is emergency, we have to get into the emergency mode itself. Only then we can tackle the emergency. We can overcome the emergency. And this mode is to consider what? Lifting of economic sanctions. That is what I was trying to make you understand in a better way, that how the economic sanctions will or is and will impact the developing countries and then the poor countries. So whatever the UN has gone ahead with the sanctions because of XYZ reasons, which are part of the mandate of the international community, but still at this moment we have to keep those all aside, especially the sanctions, and then move forward. And these sanctions are imposed by United Nations and also by few individual countries on developing countries. This is what the catch is. This is what the catch is at this moment, that United Nations and the individual countries sanctions on few of the developing countries have to be lifted at this moment, so that there is, what do you say, the entire world is coming together and then handling the situation effectively in regards to the health crisis, and then the aftermath of the health crisis is the economic crisis. So what is important at this juncture is we are going ahead, that is a health crisis, effectively trying to handle it, but the economic crisis is the one wherein we need to look at it, and then that is because all have to come together and the sanctions have to be lifted. And under the United Nations, you have the United Nations Security Council. Under the United Nations, this one, under the United Nations, you have one of the organ, that is United Nations Security Council, which has a mandate by the international community to apply the sanctions that are binding on all United member states. That means once the United Security Council takes into consideration that there has to be a sanction applied to X country, then it is binding on, that decision is binding on all the United member states. That is almost all the 193 countries have to abide by the United Security Council, that is UNSC mandate. That what is a mandate here in our discussion? It is in regards to the applying sanctions. So we will look at the other point, and these sanctions is to serve, they serve an international communities, that is which is a most powerful peaceful means. So imposing the sanction is the most powerful peaceful means. Why? To prevent any kind of threats to the international peace and security. So whenever United Nations Security Council thinks that yes, definitely by a specific country or individual or couple of countries, there would be a threat to the international peace and security. Please do understand my point. Whenever there is a threat to the international peace and security, then the imposition by the United Nations Security Council, that is the sanctioning, imposing the sanctioning, is the most powerful peaceful method to go ahead with. So again, this one is important for the prelims analytical point of view, and many international sanctions were imposed based on the political or economic decisions. So whenever the International United Nations Security Council UNSC has gone ahead with imposing the UN sanctions, it could be in regards to the political impact or the decisions or in regards to the economic decisions. And this will definitely be as a part of diplomatic efforts. When I'm saying this again, analytical point of view for prelims based. So diplomatic efforts on taken on part of diplomatic efforts by countries. It could be a single country coming together and then deciding, that is, it could be a US deciding, or multilateral or regional organizations. So sanctions can be based on or part of the diplomatic efforts taken up by a, what do you say, single country or countries together, or by a regional organization or multilateral organization. So here again, for prelims point of view, sanctions can be imposed politically and economically, decisions taken by the part of diplomatic efforts by countries, multilateral or regional. This is important for, what do you say, analytical, what do you say, understanding for prelims 2020. If at all there is a question based on, what do you say, United Nations sanctions. And the next is, as we have seen that these sanctions were meant either to protect the national security interest, to protect the national security interest, or to protect the international law and defend against the threats which would impact the international peace and security. So there could be a chance that in one of the statement in the prelims it could be mentioned that the sanctions are meant to protect national security interest. One line, I mean one sentence. Second sentence, protect international law. And then third sentence, to defend against threats to international peace and security. Please do understand the way I'm trying to, what is a, link it with the analytical prelims point of view. The sanctions would be imposed based on first statement, to protect the national security interest, second statement, to protect the international laws, and the third statement could be to defend against threats to international peace and security. It could say which among the following, that is, what do you say, A, B, C, or it's what you say, all the above. So it is very important that you need to understand about the national security, that it is for by protecting the international law, and also in regards to making sure that there is peace, peace and security internationally. So again, for prelims point of view, analytical, this is very important. See, the way we are trying to, what you say, get to the point, how and when I'm trying to make it very clear to the viewers or to you all, that how it would be definitely useful for the prelims and then mains point of view. So please do understand the explanation what I'm making, and then make sure that you are listening to the lecture throughout, so that you will be benefited maximum. The victims of these sanctions suffer in silence. That means, generally, what the victims of these sanctions, it is the developing countries and the poor countries. Definitely the victims are victims of these sanctions are, as I said, poor countries and then developing countries. Either they suffer in silence because they cannot, what you say, oppose the developed countries, or else the next or the alternative is to engage in the negotiations, either to suffer in silence or to engage in negotiations to get some relief. Because once sanctions are imposed, then you would be, I mean, the country's economy would be totally squeezed, it would shrink. So what is important at this junction for few of the poor and developing countries is to suffer in silence and get, what you say, be prepared for the worst, that is economic, the crisis to happen, or else get into the negotiation tables, get to the negotiation tables and then accept, or what do you say, you go ahead with abiding by the rules and then get some relief. That is in regards to the UN sanctions what we have discussed. Now we will look at the individuals, countries also going ahead with the sanctions irrespective of the UN sanctions. So we will look at couple of the, there are many, but we will look at couple of the US sanctions on various countries. So we have seen that the UN sanctions, they, I mean, in spite of or having the UN sanctions, we have seen the unilateral sanctions. That is what I'm talking about. Each and every country going ahead with the sanctions, and the country which is very much used to this sanctions unilaterally is the US, and they are imposing by individual countries because they wanted to go ahead with their own strategic objectives. And yes, the US has its own strategic objectives. They wanted to make sure that they grow economically, and that is the main point, the reason that they are going ahead with unilateral sanctions, not what you say getting in tune with the UN. But if US feels that any country is what do you say against its decision, it could be Russia, or it could be what do you say Iran, it could be Iraq. We have seen in the past the US has gone ahead with unilateral sanctions, imposing the economic sanctions on those countries, what I've said, that is Russia, Iran, Iraq, and then there are many other countries which, or else even North Korea. We have seen North Korea also, and then we have seen India was also what you say the victim of the sanctions by the UN, not US, by the what do you say UN, when we have gone ahead with the test, nuclear test in the year 1998. So when we have done it, there were sanctions. So these developing countries are the one which will be impacted. When we are talking about it, the Russia is also what you say the developed countries, but US has gone ahead with imposing economic sanctions on Russia when Russia has taken over Crimea. Where is Crimea? It is part of the Ukraine. It is a peninsular region of Ukraine country, but the Crimea is a what do you say a peninsula wherein 60 percentage of them are the Russians. They speak Russian, I mean Russian language. So they wanted to be part of Russian Federation rather than Ukraine. So it was the Russia has gone ahead with taking over the Crimea, and then UN has imposed economic sanctions along with the US. So it is all because of the strategic objectives by the US, and they are very strong economic cohesion. That is, I'm talking about the unilateral sanctions by the US. It impacts very cohesive manner on the country which they are imposing in regards to the economic point of view. And it is going ahead with unilateral sanctions which can range between coercive diplomatic efforts, economic warfare, or it could lead to a war itself, because if still the country wherein US is imposing the sanctions, if they are not listening, then at last the US will say that to protect the democracy we are going ahead with war with that particular country. So then they will definitely threat that particular country that they will go ahead with the war in the form of economic, diplomatic, military, and sports sanctions. We have seen this sports sanction was initially which was put on Russia, and we have seen that sanctions on Russia recently, as I said, in regards to the Crimea being part of the Russian Federation. We have seen that. We have also seen that Iran was a country which was also sanctioned by US, economic sanctions on Iran, and we have also seen Iraq was also what do you say sanctioned unilaterally by US when it has invaded Kuwait. And then there was a lot of pressure on Iraq that Iraq accepts or follows the international law, that they have to recognize the sovereignty of Kuwait. So there was a lot of pressure on Iraq that they accept Kuwait as a sovereignty independent country. And then in regards to Iran, they have made sure that they impose the sanctions on Iran, and then they said that any country any country which does not abide by the sanctions put up by the Iran, so those countries will be debarred from having trade or business with US. I repeat, when US has imposed economic sanctions on Iran because Iran was going ahead with the nuclear test. So in that aspect, the countries which will have what do you say business going on with Iran in spite of the economic sanctions by US, so those countries will be debarred from doing business with US. For example, if India is still having trade with Iran in regards to the crude oil, if it is still having the trade with Iran in regards to purchasing the crude oil, for example, then India will be debarred from having business or doing business with US. This is the crude where the US goes ahead with imposing the economic sanctions. So Iran we have looked at, and then Iraq also, and then US, that is the now the president, that is Donald Trump, has come up with a new law, that is CATSA. That is, what is CATSA? Countering America's adversaries. So what Trump wanted to do is, Trump wanted to counter. He wanted to counter whom? He wanted to counter the adversaries. Adversaries in the sense who are not friends, almost equivalent to what do you say, being as an enemy. So the one who is an enemy to America, so the one who is an enemy to America, so US wanted to counter that enemy through Sanctions Act. I suppose now you have understood it very clearly. What is CATSA? Countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act. So the country which is not having friendly relations with America, they would be countered. How? Through imposing economic sanctions. So that CATSA recently has been imposed on Russia, Iran and North Korea. And then India was just out of the what is a CATSA, because as I've given here the example, India having trade in regards to purchasing the crude oil from Iran, but still US as what do you say, kept aside India, not what do you say, part of CATSA. That means because India had a very good diplomatic relations at that moment, trying to make sure that CATSA will not be what do you say, applied to India by US. So India has diplomatically won over the US so that CATSA will not be applied to India the way it is been US has what you say, imposed, or it has applied to Russia, Iran and North Korea. And then currently the US is along or together with other countries which has sanctions against. So it is not only that what I have said, Russia, Iran and North Korea, but there are what do you say, countries like US or other countries which goes ahead with unilateral sanctions on various other countries. So the countries which are developed, the countries which are economically strong, are the one which are going ahead with the unilateral decisions. So there are sanctions against these kind of unilateral sanctions along with USA, other countries, wherein the sanctions have been imposed on Belarus, Myanmar, Cote d'Ivoire, Cuba, the Democratic Republic of Congo (DRO), Iran as we have seen, Iraq as we have seen, Liberia, yes, the northern country of Africa, the North Korea as we have seen, Sudan, yes, Syria, yes, and then Zimbabwe and several others countries. We have just mentioned few because the list goes on. But to our understanding analytical point of view, what we need to look at the keyword is unilateral sanctions. So we have looked at two keywords in regards to sanctions. That is one, UN sanctions, and the other one is the unilateral sanctions. So please do understand the keywords and then try to make sure that the kind of explanation I have taken up, it will be very important while you are writing an answer in the mains, and also the analytical questions asked in the prelims 2020. Please make it clear that this is a lengthy or else it is not really useful for the prelims. No, I am going to what is a repeat a point here, reiterate a sentence that Prelims 2020 or else preliminary examination is not the way it was actually earlier, or else 5 years, or what you say 7 years back. Not the conventional type of questions are not being asked. What questions are being asked is analytical point of view. Thereby, my lecture will definitely help you out. It will equip you with a better understanding and then better knowledge that the questions framed by UPSC in prelims 2020 are based on factual, and wherein they are picking up from the editorials and the articles which are being written by the what do you say experts or the former bureaucrats or the research scholar. From those articles and editorials they are picking up questions for the prelims also. So please do understand the importance of my lecture, wherein you will be benefited. Or else I can just what you say go ahead with taking up the factual data, I mean the factual data, and say this. No, that is not the way UPSC wants or looking at it. They are definitely looking at the way they want the analytical skills. They are looking at the analytical skills, and then they are selecting the bureaucrat right from the prelims point of view. And we have also seen, coming back to a lecture, we have also seen that G20, which has what you said taken up yesterday itself through the video conferencing, they have also proposed. So entire what we have discussed is the sanctions. That is sanctions by the developed countries. That is the UN or United Nations sanctions or unilateral sanctions that has to be lifted. Or else even I spoke about sanctions by various countries. It could be multilateral sanctions. It could be regional grouping sanctions. So G20 has considered a proposal. What G20 has considered is the lifting of multilateral and bilateral sanctions. And this is the need of the hour. Please do understand why I have taken so much of time for you to make you understand this, the term or the keyword sanctions. Because that was mainly considered or proposed in the G20. And as G20 being or could be the probability of posing a question, UPSC posing a question in the prelims 2020. So based on 2020, I mean G20, extremely sorry, based on G20, that there could be a question, and then the proposal made in the G20 is lifting of multilateral and bilateral sanctions. So when we are looking at this, it is imperative that we need to focus not just on multilateral and bilateral sanctions proposed by G20, but you as a civil servant aspirant has to focus that how we need to think about unilateral sanctions by America or else the UN sanctions at this juncture, wherein it would impact negatively on the poor countries and then the developing countries. So this analytical thinking from my lecture, from my course will definitely make you better equipped, fully loaded with information for prelims and mains. And then I would wind up by taking up a statement by one of the person, Winston Churchill, the US, wherein he says, never let a good crisis to go waste. Never let a good crisis to go waste. And the crisis is what? Yes, definitely the health crisis, and then definitely the global crisis. So what crisis we are facing, let it not go waste. Let it not go waste. Let we all come together. Let we all make sure that we are working for the betterment of the humankind. Let we all come together that all the countries would come to a level playing field so that we will all be prosperous. We will protect the planet also. Fine. So as we have discussed the two important topics. So I hope it was a very informative, knowledgeable session for you. And then please make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the bell button when you are watching the video in the YouTube. That is Let's Crack UPSC CSE English. And you can also subscribe this UPSC CSE English channel by using my code SBT10, that is Sandeep Bhushan Thummala, 10. When you are using my code while you are subscribing, you will get 10% discount. So do not, wait,